It is often debated whether a world driven by capital can ever make room for the poor to rise, and whether social work and profit making can ever go hand in hand. The debate may go on, but for these women in this teeming, overcrowded little slum in suburban Mumbai, the answer is, and always will be, a resounding yes. This is their story. Once upon a time, more than 2 decades ago, a woman came to Mumbai. A city unlike one she had ever seen before. A city where riches ran side by side with poverty and where dreams coexisted with reality. But to her, the heart of the city lay in the urban slums. The jhopatpattis, as they are called, that covered only 6% of its landscape but housed 55% of its population. It is here that the enterprise and immortal spirit that Mumbai is known for really takes birth. And it was here that Sister Isabel started her journey.
So when I came to Bombay, I felt a great attraction to not only to work for the women of the slums, but to become as much as possible one of them. So I asked permission to live in a little more than a hut, and a room only where there were no toilet, no water. And what struck me is that these women, that they have some of them drunkard husbands, they were joyful, they were very much for others, they are all the time giving whatever they have to anyone that comes to them. So it struck me that they have very beautiful values in the slum. Values that many of us we don't have.
The women had impressed Sister Isabel, but she was convinced that they were capable of much more. They were intelligent, determined, and extremely hardworking. And so, like the man who taught the little boy how to fish, she decided to teach a few of them how to stitch.
I saw very much that they are oppressed because they have not a life in their hands. They were supposed to obey the husband, to look after the children only. So together with them, we thought, why we don't start some kind of stitching? And I didn't know much about stitching. So I started learning with them. I got some patterns of the cloth, and we started with toys.
Anjali Tapkire had heard of Sister Isabel through neighbors and passers-by. She left her job packing plastic and rubber goods and came to Sister Isabel in hope of a better future.
गांव से आई थी तो मुझे ज़्यादा औरतों में काम करना ज़्यादा सेफ लग रहा था. इंडस्ट्रियल एरिया में काम करना मेरे लिए उतना आसान नहीं लगा. पहले तो 1-2 दिन खाली देखने के लिए आई थी. पक्का नहीं था कि इतने साल वहाँ पे काम करूँगी. लेकिन देखा वहाँ पे मालिक और नौकर का रिश्ता रहता है, वैसा नहीं था. वो अपने लिए ज़्यादा अच्छा काम करेगा.
It was around the same time that Siddhamma had just migrated to Mumbai from Karnataka.
बम्बई में आए, शादी करने के बाद ही आया. डिलीवर के लिए गांव गए तो आदमी ने दूसरे शादी किया. फिर बाद में मेरे को नहीं देख रहा था, कुछ भी लेने के लिए पैसे नहीं था, बच्चे मांगा तो तब मेरे को बहुत काम का जरूरत था.
With no education and no knowledge of Hindi, Amma found it impossible to find a way to support herself and her 3 children.
पहले तो कुछ नहीं, खाली 5-6 औरत था. बड़ी सीटर उधर इधर का कपड़ा लाके देने का, थोड़ा तो भी टॉयस बनाने का 10 रुपए का एक, 25 रुपए का एक, ऐसा टॉयस बना के भेजने का स्कूल में जाके.
Slowly, more and more women found their way to Sister Isabel's doorstep. But even after 5 years, the numbers had only grown to around 20 women.
पहले ना बहुत डराने का मेरे को. पहले लोग वो कोऑपरेटिव बोलेगा ना, अपना खुद का पैसे डालने का, खुद ही काम करने का, और कम पड़ेगा तो अपना घर का पैसे डालना पड़ेगा, ऐसा बोलेगा. तो मैं डर गया था. सिस्टर को बोला मैं नहीं करेगा कोऑपरेट में काम. सिस्टर क्या बोला, तुमको कम पड़ेगा ना, तब घर का पैसे डालने को लगेगा ना, तब मैं खुद तेरा पैसे मैं भरेगा, तू डर मत. सिस्टर को पर इतना जान आया ना, पूछो मत. कभी भी मैं ये सेंटर छोड़ने का सपना भी देखेगा तो ऐसा लगता है माँ को छोड़ रही मैं.
Whatever the bond among these women, this fairy tale was often interrupted by harsh doses of reality.
भाड़े का रूम लेने का पहले 11-11 महीना में चेंज करने का सब मशीन का साथ उठा के लेके जाना पड़ता था। ओले हॉस्पिटल है ना, उधर एक रूम में 8 दिन में अपन गया, उधर मशीन का आवाज आता करके 3 दिन में वो लोग ने ये किया था, तब वापस दूसरा रूम में चेंज करने का इतना तकलीफ उठाता था पहले।
Getting a place to work in a busy area like Mumbai was no easy task. Luckily for everyone, a church that functioned out of a suburban slum donated their land for the purpose.
अभी पहली बार ये शोरूम है ना, वो रूम एक रूम में ना सिस्टर ने कर दी किया था, तब इतना खुश हो गया था ना अपन 5 औरत, तो बहुत खुश हो गया था। खुश हो के ना दीवार का भी चुना भी पूरा निकल के अपन ये मेहनत करने को लगा था, ऐसा लगता था अपना खुद का कर ली।
With a place they could call their own, the women finally formed themselves into an organization and called themselves Creative Handicrafts.
From the very beginning, I was managing myself with the women, but came one day that it was superior to my strength. So I tried very soon to get someone in the administration, and I changed several times till I find the person that I saw that was understanding, love for the poor, marginalized, and patient enough to deal with them.
Sister Isabel finally decided on Johnny Joseph as director of this newly registered organization.
We do not want to have the similar setup like a factory, wherein you have workers who are whole day producing, and you normally have supervisors who are supervising that. Here we wanted to have a different model wherein they have a sense of ownership. So that is why we have this kind of a setup wherein each groups work on their own. Further, they become a member of the organization, so they are part of the management wherein they form a general assembly and they elect a board. But for all administrative aspects, you have a director and staffs who manage the organization.
I came in contact with Creative Handicraft about 8 years ago, and I was quite impressed since the first moment to see how this organization is working. It's not that they do production with them on a charity basis. They give to the women the chance to become small entrepreneurs.
Anjali and Siddhamma were made group in charge for their respective centers.
हाँ, स्टाफ आने के बाद भी हम लोग में ऐसा कुछ इतना बदल नहीं हुआ। आज भी हम लोग मेंबर है, वो मुझे आज भी है, और हमारी औरतों को भी वही लगता है कि हम लोग मेंबर्स है यहाँ के।
मेन बोला था 20 जोनी सर ने आया ना, बहुत अच्छे। ये आने के बाद, जोनी सर आने के बाद बहुत आगे निकला गए। 100 रुपए 200 रुपए में कोई औरत लोग बहुत ही छोड़ दिया ना पहले वाला। मेरे को ऐसा लगता है आगे नहीं बढ़ेगा, ऐसा लगता था।
Although Creative was now a registered organization and functioned like a company, at its heart it still was and always would be an organization of the women, by the women, and for the women. And so profits and losses came in only second to the women's needs. And the biggest need, taking care of their children.
क्यों मेरा बच्चे को दूसरा ने उठा के लेके गया था, ऐसा दूसरा को नहीं होने का, ऐसा कभी। वो बच्चा देखेगा तो वो लोग गरीब लोग भी शांति से तो काम कर सकते। मैं शांति नहीं था, मेरा घर पे छोड़ के आती तो मेरा मन आधा घर पे आधा सेंटर में रहता था। मेरे को अभी ऐसा लगता है कि रस की बहुत जरूरी है, क्यों मैं तकलीफ उठाया ना, सामने वाला नहीं उठाने का।
With creches set up for their children, the women were now more at peace and could focus completely on their work. But there were other problems to deal with.
There was an immediate need of saving and loan. Many women take loans. These women have no access to bank because they have no papers or nothing to mortgage. So their access to credit is access to money lenders. And they charge a heavy interest, which is like 60 to 120% at any point of time. So we said, let us start our own little bank. Let her save 50 rupees a month. If we have, say, 700 women saving 50 rupees a month, you have 35,000 rupees a month.
Meanwhile, keeping with the spirit of this being the women's organization, Anjali was made president of the board of trustees and later assigned to supervise a new initiative called Asli Foods.
क्रिएटिव में बहुत सारी ऐसी औरतें हम लोग को मिल रहे थे क्या, जिनको ट्रेनिंग देने के बावजूद भी वो उतना कैच नहीं कर पाए। उनको घर तो नहीं भेज सकते थे, उनके हालात हम लोग जानते थे। तो 10 साल पहले ही ऐसा एक नया आइडिया आया था। बेसिक चपाती भाजी बनाना, खाना बनाना तो औरतों के पास बेसिक स्किल है, वो तो उनको आता ही है। तो क्यों नहीं हम लोग ऐसा एक यूनिट चालू करते हो जिसका चपाती भाजी का सेंटर हो जाएगा और खाना बेचना चालू करते हैं हम लोग।
Even with all this in place, the administration at Creative Handicrafts was mainly functioning because of funds from donors and developmental organizations abroad, while the sales income was distributed solely among the women to take care of their needs.
Initially, I mean, maybe 10 years back, they still looked upon the organization as an organization that is helping them. So there was a need for a bit more professional attitude from their side. That cannot be brought in overnight. In a corporate setup, if you do not perform, you are asked to leave. Even if one woman produces, say, a little lower quality, we still cannot ask her to go. We have to find a way so that she remains with us, but she is not affecting the organization's performance. This is the most difficult part I personally felt, doing both social work and business.
Whatever the difficulties, the donors funding Creative could not continue funding them for long. And Joseph realized that although they could not take away from the women's earnings, Creative would soon need to develop quality goods and professionalism in order to sustain itself.
We tried several ways of increments so that the attitude changes, you know. We are not looking only at productivity. We are looking at how cooperative is the woman in the group. That gets marked. We are also looking at how regular she is. That gets marks.
The next step were training centers.
In the beginning, the training used to be for full day. And then we found people were leaving midway. They were not able to sustain themselves through the course of the training. So we said, let us have the training for half a day. And the other half, she can either work outside as a domestic help or in the other departments of Creative Handicraft, because we have a lot of small jobs like cutting the thread, cleaning, packing, etc.
Like the women, the staff too needed to include professionals in various areas. To make their products more saleable, designers were hired. To maintain quality control, quality checkers too joined the staff. Some of them from among the women themselves.
जब सिस्टर ये क्रिएटिव की एक प्रक्रिया में व्यस्त थी 4-5 महिलाओं के साथ, उस वक्त मैं बहुत छोटी थी और उनके आसपास ही मंडराती रहती थी। फिर कभी कुछ विजिटर्स आए तो उनके लिए डांस परफॉर्मेंस करती थी। और फिर शादी के बाद जॉइंट फैमिली में होने की वजह से बहुत सी चीज़ों के लिए बहुत तरसना पड़ता था। तो सोचा क्यों ना मैं खुद अपने पैरों पर खड़े रह के अपनी सभी अधूरी इच्छाओं को पूरी करूं। मैंने उसको ऐसे ही बताया। मैंने बहुत पड़ाव पार किए हैं। जैसे ट्रेनिंग से सेंटर में गई, सेंटर से सेंटर इंचार्ज बनी, उसके बाद ट्रेनिंग से इंचार्ज बनी, उसके बाद एज ए एम्ब्रॉयडरी कोऑर्डिनेटर बनी, फिर क्वालिटी चेकर, फिर परचेसिंग इंचार्ज और आज जिस पोस्ट पे हूँ मैं असिस्टेंट प्रोडक्शन मैनेजर की हैसियत से यहाँ काम कर रही हूँ।
Like Rosie, Nandini too followed the same path of progress to become assistant production manager. But unlike the previous generation, this generation had learnt the value of quality.
स्टार्टिंग में बहुत महिला लोगों को जो समझाने में भी उन लोग कैसे भी सीखे हमारे पास आता, फिर रोज़ उनके साथ में झगड़ा, क्योंकि ना हमेशा हमारे पीस रिजेक्ट करते करके हमसे भी झगड़ा, बहुत पूरा होच पोच जैसा था। लेकिन अभी हमारा महिलाएं काफ़ी सुधर गए, उनको पता है हम अच्छा क्वालिटी देगा तो हमको वापस ऑर्डर मिलेगा करके।
अगर क्वालिटी ना हो तो हमें काम कौन देगा? ग्राहक पहले आंखों से देखता है, फिर वो खरीदता है।
Today we give an order, they deliver pretty on time, and they also deliver with very few rejections.
Siddhamma's daughters, Bharti, Santoshi and Mahadevi were now part of this new generation of professionals. While Bharti and Santoshi had joined Asli Foods, Mahadevi began her training to stitch.
पहले ना मेरे पति के साथ अंबरनाथ में हम लोग काम करते थे, फिर मम्मी के इधर आई, उसके बाद घर काम भी करी। फिर मेरी मम्मी ने बड़बड़ किया, बोले क्या घर काम करती है, बच्चे लोगों को कौन संभालेगा। फिर मम्मी बोले हम लोग किधर कर, उधर बच्चे लोग रखने का किराया भी है और अच्छे भी रहेंगे। तो मैं बोली क्या उधर 300 रुपये में क्या होएगा। मैं बोली मम्मी बोली कुछ नहीं, तो बच्चे तो अच्छे रहेंगे ना उधर।
If we don't help the women to earn a living, she works as a domestic help in the neighborhood, and that unfortunately doesn't have the dignity it should have in our society. So women coming here, even if sometimes it is possible that she earns a little less than what she would have earned working as a domestic help, but she prefers this because this has dignity. She takes a lot of pride in saying that I'm working in a company, though we don't want to call ourselves a company.
Although empowered with dignity and the power to earn, Sister Isabel wished she had empowered them at an earlier age through education.
I thought that education is very, very important, that by themselves the women, it was not enough to come out of their poverty. I thought very, very important to take the children and put in them the desire to go to the schools. They didn't want to go to schools. They wanted to enjoy life.
And so, Creative Handicrafts started play schools or balwadis, not just for the women who worked at Creative, but for all the children from the neighboring slums. And the teachers for these balwadis came from these very slums.
यहाँ सुभाष नगर नाम का एक स्लम है। सुभाष नगर में जब आई मैं टोटली हेल्पलेस हो गई थी। घर की परिस्थिति ऐसी थी कि मैं खुला रख के जा नहीं सकती, घर को दरवाजा ही नहीं था, ऐसे ही गोनी लगा के जाते थे। क्रिएटिव हैंडीक्राफ्ट के सोशल वर्कर वहाँ सर्वे कर रहे थे, तो बोलते हैं हम लोग को यहाँ पे बालवाड़ी खोलने का, हमको अभी एक टीचर चाहिए, आप कितने पढ़े हो? मैं बोले 12th किया है। तो उन्होंने बोला चलेगा, आप सुबह में यहाँ पे आ जाओ, हमारे सर है जॉनी सर, उनसे मिलो और उनका एप्लीकेशन बता दो।
In a slum where both education and hygiene were seen as accessories that could be done without, it was not just the children, but a whole mindset that needed to be changed.
क्रिएटिव हैंडीक्राफ्ट की जब बालवाड़ी दिसंबर से चालू हो गई, उस एरिया के बच्चे लोग नहा के नहीं आते थे। बालवाड़ी ट्रेनिंग जब मैंने लिया तो उसमें एक सब्जेक्ट है, चाहे बच्चा बालवाड़ी में कैसा भी आए तो उसको नीट एंड क्लीन करने के लिए 10 मिनट उनको देना चाहिए। जब वो बच्चा आया फिर उसको क्लीन करने के बाद एक बच्चे को कैसे तरह से आईने में बता के साफ सुथरे करके उनको बालवाड़ी में बिठाया जाता है। तो ऐसे 1, 2 बार 3 बार किया तो पेरेंट्स ही बोलने लगे मेरा बच्चा तो गंदा आता है, लेकिन इधर से जाते वक्त उसके सर पे कंघी रहती है, मतलब अच्छी तरह से आता है। अभी पेरेंट्स को भी बोलने की गरज नहीं है। और पहला ऐसा लगता था बालवाड़ी में बच्चे को भेजा तो 3 घंटा रिलैक्स है, लेकिन अभी के पेरेंट्स अभी 3 घंटे में हम बालवाड़ी में टीचर्स क्या सिखाती क्या नहीं सिखाती वो हमको आके पूछती है।
The balwadis had turned out to be a huge success, and so for older children, Creative Handicrafts started the Bal Vikas Kendra.
वहाँ पे पहले बेगर्स ज़्यादा रहते थे, तभी बच्चों लोग को मतलब स्कूल है मालूम नहीं था, लेकिन उस टाइम बहुत टीचर्स ने बहुत मेहनत लिया। उस टाइम उधर के जो छोटे छोटे बच्चे थे अभी वहाँ के CA कोर्स कर रहे, कोई कॉलेज में है, कोई काम पे भी लगा है, लेकिन पढ़ के काम पे लगे।
I really believe that the real change in their life happens with the next generation. When the children have completed their education and have started working, a big change happens in her life, because then she would move from the slums to a better housing. She would have left the job by then. So that is the real change that is happening.
Although not very educated herself, Mahadevi now understands the importance of education. She now sends her children to one of the best schools in the area.
मैं कभी सोची नहीं थी मेरे बच्चे इंग्लिश मीडियम में पढ़ेंगे, लेकिन यहाँ पे मुझे वो भी चांस दिया बच्चे लोग इंग्लिश मीडियम में डालने का। और फिर मेरी बेटी को ना डांस क्लास बहुत शौक था भरतनाट्यम का, तो मैंने पूछा था, फिर उधर डाली, 2 साल करी।
Sampada herself, who walked into Creative Handicrafts as a Balwadi teacher, was now a paraprofessional social worker at Creative.
कभी सोचा भी नहीं था कि ये लेवल पे आके मैं बैठूंगी। मेरे को पैराप्रोफेशनल कोर्स करना था, बालवाड़ी ट्रेनिंग के लिए कुछ सीखने का था, तो हमको फाइनेंशियल हेल्प क्रिएटिव हैंडीक्राफ्ट हमको करती है, और पढ़ने के लिए हमको कभी मना ही नहीं। क्रिएटिव हैंडीक्राफ्ट इतना ही बोलता है कि आगे बढ़ो, हम हैं आपके साथ।
Sampada was now trained to give more than what she had received from Creative.
ज़्यादातर इधर महिला है, उनको कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन ज़्यादातर रहती नहीं है, तो हम लोग एवरी सैटरडे रिसोर्स पर्सन बुला के उनको एक अवेयरनेस प्रोग्राम उनको मिलना चाहिए।
The women were now trained to deal with a multiplicity of matters, from RTI applications to police complaints. And the shift in their attitudes was dramatic.
पहले की रोजी घर में बहुत चुपचाप रहती थी, आज की रोजी घर में अपना विचार बताने में सक्षम है कि ये सही है, ये गलत है। पहले नहीं होता था। जो सही है उसमें भी गर्दन हिलाने का, जो गलत है उसमें भी गर्दन। लेकिन अभी एकदम ठोस रूप में बोल सकती हूँ, नहीं ये गलत है, ये नहीं होना चाहिए, और उसके फैसले की इज्जत होती है।
पहला मैं किधर भी जाने के लिए भी बहुत डरती थी, किसी से बात करने में भी बहुत डरती थी, लेकिन यहाँ पे मुझे बहुत हिम्मत मिला है और अभी कुछ जैसा डरती नहीं हूँ मैं, किससे भी बात करो इंसान।
पहले ऐसा लगता था बुद्धू है मैं, बहुत जन सोचता था क्यों पल्लू का सिर का पल्लू मैं हटाती ही नहीं थी, सिर पे 24 तास पल्लू रहता था मेरा। अभी तो मैं कुछ किसको ये नहीं डरती, अभी मेरा हिम्मत है, अभी किधर भी जा सकती, किधर से भी आ सकती, कभी नहीं सुधरेगा।
This confidence and self-actualization manifested itself economically too.
From 2002, one major step that we have achieved is, which was also a challenge, is that we are self-sustainable. Our economic development program does not need funds. From the income that we get from the sales, we can manage the product development cost, the personnel, the administrative cost. From 2002 to 2010, we have probably grown almost 20 times our sales turnover. To 2002, they were earning around 1,000, 1,500 rupees. Today, on an average, they are earning around 6,000 to 7,000 rupees. In the year 2002, they would have had a sharing at the time of profit sharing, we call it, in Diwali, maybe around 2,000 rupees. Today, this year, some of them shared almost 25,000 rupees.
I did a long trip all around India, finding manufacturers interested in producing ethical clothes. And for me, I just thought that Creative Handicrafts was the only place that could produce good runs, like long runs of standard quality. You know, there's a lot of fair trade cooperatives out there, and the garments are halfway done, like not possible to sell in the West. You know, and Creative Handicraft understand quality and understand consistency.
Carrefour is a retailer. It's actually the second largest retailer in the world. We've been in contact with Creative Handicrafts, I think 3 years ago. And what is very good with Creative Handicrafts, it's a like very sustainable project, because it's not only financing a project, but it's establishing like a commercial trade with an organization that can sustain for a very long time.
Economic growth for the women now means more than just earnings. The savings and credit group that used to at one point have 20,000 rupees in its kitty now had almost 500,000 rupees available for the women to access. In addition, every woman has a welfare scheme that ensures that she takes away something when she retires, and a medical insurance.
Now, all our women are insured through two programs. One is with the Handicrafts Development Office, which insures all artisans. But there is another scheme that we have started our own. We call it Creative Arogya Nidhi, wherein every woman contributes certain amount of fund every month towards a mutual fund. And the Creative Handicrafts from its central pool puts rupees 50 every month. So that is 600 rupees per woman.
Today, Creative is entering new areas and changing the lives of more communities. For some time now, they have started work in the tribal pockets of Mumbai.
अगर नया एरिया हम जाके सर्वे करते हैं तो एंट्री पॉइंट हमारा बालवाड़ी रहता है। उसके बाद पेरेंट्स मीटिंग से हम लोग एक सेविंग ग्रुप चालू करते हैं, फिर सेविंग ग्रुप से ही हमारे को सवाल आते हैं कि हमको कुछ काम करना है, तो उनके लिए एक टेलरिंग क्लास ऐसा चालू करके कोर्स पूरा होने के बाद अगर उनको लगता है कि क्रिएटिव हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स के सेंटर में काम करें, नहीं तो वो लोग खुद स्किल्ड होने के बाद वो दूसरे जगह पे खुद अपना काम ढूंढ लेते हैं.
We have a lot of potential to increase the number of groups. One major problem is that our orders are very seasonal. Now, when we have a group, we are forced to give them work right through the year. This is a challenge that we need to overcome.
Recognizing their work, the government of Navarra in Spain recently honored Creative with its highest philanthropic award, the Premio Príncipe de Viana a la Solidaridad.
Ganador del Premio Príncipe de Viana de la Solidaridad 2010 a Creative Handicrafts.
And there to receive it was none other than Creative's first member and the current president of the Board of Trustees.
अभी अगर पलट के मैं पीछे देखती हूँ तो मेरे लिए मैंने सपने में भी नहीं सोचा था वैसी लाइफ मैंने जिया. मेरी पढ़ाई खाली 12th तक हुई थी। अब मैंने इधर आने के बाद में मेरा ग्रेजुएशन पूरा किया, तो उतने सारे क्वालिफिकेशन में मैं जहाँ क्रिएटिव में रह के इतना ऊपर गई हूँ उतना बाहर कभी नहीं जाती थी। खाली एक ग्रेजुएशन पे कोई इतना इंसान स्पेन जा रहा है, फ्रांस जा रहा है, मैंने कभी नहीं सोचा था। वो मैं एक्चुअली जी रही हूँ।
My happiness today is to see that the women, they can stand by themselves, they don't need anyone, and they can go on helping also to the other women that they are in the community around them. It's much more than that's what I dream.
It's been 25 long years and one hell of a journey for these women. From 4 women learning how to stitch, to an organization that could barely make ends meet, to now a company with a newly acquired 4-story building and a turnover of over 65 million this year, is all no mean feat. But the bigger feat is that Creative has been able to achieve this on their own terms.
Creative's values have not changed. They are the same because the requirement to become a part of Creative Handicraft is that the person should be really needy.
What I like here, there is a lot of empowerment of the women, of the crafts people which are working, which is not always the case because often people came there and they follow them from the beginning to the end as they would be child. They are not child, they are only disadvantaged. But if you give them the chance, they can develop capacity which is extraordinary, and this is what we have seen here.
अगर एक आदमी फ़ायदा लेता होगा, एक आदमी जो भी फ़ायदा होता होगा वो एक आदमी लेता होगा तो वो सोशल वर्क नहीं कर सकता। यहाँ पे ऐसा है कि यहाँ के सब मेंबर्स हैं, जो भी यहाँ फ़ायदा होता है वो सब मेंबर्स में बांटा जाता है। प्रॉफिट मेकिंग और सोशल वर्क दोनों साथ में हो सकता है, उसका एग्जाम्पल है क्रिएटिव हैंडीक्राफ्ट।
Yeah.